But tonight, I want to talk about solo wargaming, and is it something that you and I should be doing more of? What's the good points about solo wargaming? What's the bad points? But I'll tell you what I think, and then you can make up your own mind. But let me know down in the comments whether solo wargaming, you think is something for you, or is it something that you kind of you do as a bit of a last resort when there's no other option. So from a positives point of view, solo wargaming, I think that what solo wargaming does is it removes the biggest barrier within wargaming itself, which is finding someone to play with. Let's be honest, we all want to play more games, I think. I mean, the majority of people who enjoy the game inside, we all want to play more games, and normally the barrier is getting somebody else to play against, be that there's nobody that wants to play the game that you want to play. You don't want to play the game that somebody else is playing. You can't get your schedules lined up, so your gaming group meets on a Thursday night, but you kind of, I don't know, you have like family commitments. You take the kids to like some sports practice on a Thursday night or something. There's always reasons why it's difficult to kind of, around family life especially, to try and find time to play with other folks. So I think what playing solo games does is it really does kind of take down the biggest barrier we all have about finding an opponent. Another positive is playing solo games allows you to understand how a game plays, and then allows you to be able to kind of understand it to teach to somebody else. So when we're talking about solo games, just to clarify, we are talking about games that are designed to be played single player. And a lot of games that are designed to be played single player can be played cooperative. So like basically if you can play it solo, you could split those minis in half if you like, and your friend could play the other half, and you can play against the game. And some of those solo games are also designed to be player versus player, as well as play solo and co-op. So being able to play a game solo means you can sit at home in your own time, learn the rules, find out how it plays, understand it a bit more, and then be able to teach it to somebody else. It's not always the easiest thing to be able to teach yourself to play a game that needs two players to be able to play it. So I think solo games definitely have that going for them as well. Touching on something I've just mentioned there as well, another positive is if a game can be played solo, it can be played co-op, which for a lot of players is a really, really good way to play the games. My wife, not really a fan of player versus player kind of games, be that miniatures games or be that board games. A lot of the stuff that we play where we can kind of play alongside each other against the game. My wife's not somebody that wants to sit and read through rule books and learn all of the rules and learn tactics. She knows that I play a lot more often than she does, so there's always going to be a bit of a tactical imbalance in the fact that I'm just more aware of how the game plays versus how she does. And so what we found over time is that playing cooperative games works much better for us as kind of as a couple of players, if you like. So any game that you can play solo, like I say, you can just kind of, if there's 10 models in a warband or something like that, you can split them up and say, yeah, you take 5 and control them, I'll take these 5 and control them, and we'll play together and try and kind of beat the game that way. So that's another plus point for solo war games. Another positive for solo war games is they let you play the games that you want to play, not just to play the games that other people play in order to get an opponent. So I've talked about this on live streams before, about like what you can do to try and get players to play the games that you want. One thing that always crops up when I talk about sort of playing slightly less popular games, shall we say, is, it's always hard to find an opponent. I'd rather just play 40k. It's not really the game I enjoy, but I know I'll always be able to get a game of it. If you're playing solo games, that doesn't have to be a consideration. You really can play the games that you really want to play. So that's a real positive as well when it comes to solo games. Another positive, that solo games are really, really good for those miniature agnostic games. So if you have lots of minis that you already use, or you like for other games and bits and pieces, you can take them and play them in your solo miniature agnostic games, and you don't have to worry about constantly kind of going to your opponent. Well, this model I've got here, this Space Marine with this weapon represents sort of such and such on the board, and this wizard here it isn't a wizard. It's like it's a bit of a ranger, and it represents this one. You don't have any of that to clarify to your opponent all the time. You know exactly what everything is yourself. You're playing the game alone. You don't have to worry about them kind of stuff. So you're playing those maybe slightly more kind of obscure miniature agnostic games, it's another plus point when it comes to the solo side. Another positive is that they are perfect for house ruling rules to the games where maybe you don't necessarily like the way something plays, or maybe the theme of the game doesn't really fit with what you want. So you can take the basic core engine of that game and twist it to something else. Games like Rangers of Shadow Deep, for example, has a really good core system that I've seen people like use that as a framework to be able to play a game of Star Wars, basically replacing all of the different types of characters with kind of Star Wars characters, for example. And again, of course you could do this if you're playing kind of player versus player games, but it's something you then have to agree all of those rules with your opponent. You need to clarify what everything is. Like, I know it says this in the rules, but what I mean is this is what it is. If you're playing that solo, you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. You're just playing the game the way that you want to play it. Another positive, solo games generally have more of a narrative experience to them rather than relying upon that kind of competitive player versus player element. So in my experience, because solo games, you're playing against an AI, for example, there's a very much more narrative storytelling reason to it. Like, you're not really playing a solo game in order to win. You're playing a solo game in order to play a game. And what tends to happen is those rules, those books that have these solo games tend to kind of like sort of really embellish and kind of sort of give you a real story about why this game is happening, why this event is happening, why you have to complete this mission, why you have to do this scenario, that kind of thing. So I tend to find if you're more into the scenario, the story-driven stuff, that definitely comes through, in general, a lot stronger in some solo games. The last positive point I want to say about solo games is that you kind of get value out of your purchase, as there's nothing really stopping you playing the game. Like, we all buy these 2-player starter sets. We all buy these box sets with our intentions of, we're going to play loads of games. I'm going to get it all built. I'm going to get it painted. I'm going to play loads of games. And you might well get them built. You might even get them painted. But I would say that 9 times out of 10, you play a lot less games than you probably envisioned that you would be playing. When it comes to solo games, again, that barrier isn't really there. So you tend to get a little bit more value for money out of those solo experiences by being able to play it whenever you want. One more positive experience as well I forgot about is that actually solo games are great to play with kids as well. So as I mentioned before, a lot of solo games can all be played from a cooperative standpoint, and that's perfect for basically if you've got younger players who see you playing and they want to get involved. Like, if you're playing a player versus player game, you've got to teach that kind of the little one the rules. You have to teach them enough that basically at least they feel like they're in control of something. Where if you're playing like a co-op game, like if you're playing a solo game and splitting it down between the two of you, you're helping each other. Like, there's not this case of like sort of, I'm going to destroy your army kind of thing. Like, you might be 6, but I'm still going to beat you kind of thing. You can play it together. The little one feels like they're involved. They're rolling the dice. They're moving the miniatures, but you're basically coaching them through it and you're helping them play. So it's great for playing with like families and younger kids and stuff. Now, all of that said, I've just kind of made it sound like sort of solo games are the kind of, they're the best thing since sliced bread and everybody should be playing solo games. There is one big negative that for me personally actually kind of trumps all those positives. And that one big negative is it's a very isolating experience playing solo games. What I do for a job, I'm here, I'm on my own. I love to sit and paint. My hobby is sitting on my own, painting miniatures. I don't like go out to work and kind of surround myself with people every day. So for me personally, gaming is the thing that gets me out of the house. It gets me interacting socially, and I really enjoy the social experience of playing games. That just disappears if you just play solo games. Now, it might be very different for you. Like, you might have a really busy job where you work in a factory and there's lots of noise, or you work in a shop and you're constantly surrounded by people. And when you get home, you might just want to switch off and lock the world away and play a solo game. If that's the case, definitely check out some solo games. There are so many good ones out there. But for me personally, the last thing that I need is to play games on my own as well. Like that almost basically is the point where I might as well get rid of the front door lock because I never leave the house at that point, kind of thing. For me, the social side of gaming is the reason I got into playing games. I got into the tabletop hobby by sitting painting miniatures and sitting at home and enjoying the kind of the relaxing pursuit of just kind of painting, and it was very zen and it was very calming. But when I played the first games, the traveling to tournaments with friends, the night times of going for a few beers and some nice food and chatting about tabletop games, the going to the club on a Wednesday or a Thursday night or a Sunday afternoon, meeting up with people, seeing what other people have been painting, seeing what other games people are playing, getting demo games of other games, getting involved in that whole social experience. That for me is what the hobby is all about, for me personally. And again, I am talking from a personal experience. So this is the reason why actually solo games are not for me, because the most important part of this hobby for me is the social experience and the mixing with people and the kind of that involve myself in communities. That might not be the case for you. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Do you think, have you always written off solo games and thought, that's the last thing I need is to be playing games kind of on my own kind of thing? Or is it something that you've tried and you absolutely love it to the point now where you don't even go looking for like opponents to play anymore? Is it something that it's a last resort for you and you only do it when you really can't get a game? Let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to see kind of how folks think about solo games. Thanks for watching.